part 3 or part 4 of the lower unit rebuild here that started as just a seal problem and has escalated to multiple different bearings and parts. This morning I just went in and I still got to do the anode here and on the whatever, we'll get to it, I don't even know what you call it, the other insert thing, but I went and cleaned all this out. I have the parts all out here and repainted, ready to go back in, and just searching for that metal. This is the most metal I was able to find in the whole unit. We'll take a closer look at that in a second. And it was right down on that ledge there. So I'm curious the health of these bearings. I'm going to stick the camera in there and see if we can't get a good look at the health of these needle bearings. In this bearing, which I think is called, it's either the drive shaft bearing or the pinion bearing. But before I do, let's just take a look at this metal. It's chunky. It's almost like a tooth, or I'm not sure, like a gear. I've been looking and I can't find like a real source of that on this forward gear here. I think that's what it's called. There was some wear and pitting on a couple of the teeth, but not material like that. And I didn't see any other place where on all the surfaces where that much material had come off. I'll keep looking, but this thing is empty now. I mean, there's nothing left in here. So, all right, I'm gonna stick the camera in and see how that bearing looks from the bottom side up. All right, so here's the plan. Like I said, couldn't find exactly where that metal was. I don't want to dive much deeper into here because I'm way deeper than I should be anyway, and everything looks okay. The pinion gear, you know, didn't have any material missing from it. Can't really see in the bag. I'll show it to you in a minute, but you know, all these gears look okay. There might be something wrong inside here perhaps, but honestly, I'm going to pretend that that's totally fine and just put it all back together. And to do that, I didn't have a part 4 of the disassembly. There was some more steps involved, so I'm going to touch on them when I reinsert them on how to remove the drive shaft and then whatever you call this from here, which I didn't record. So I'm going to start by putting the drive shaft. Well, let me think about that. I'm going to put this in first and then stick the drive shaft down. Yeah. Well, let me figure out what I need to do first and then I'll record it. Okay, I got the gear works back in. I can see the shifter in the very back of the lower unit now. The gear is behind where the drive shaft and pinion will come down. and it's sitting flat. I had to go, mess around with it vertically, holding the lower unit up and just trying to insert the gear case or the gears into the gear case, but eventually got it in. So I think I'm good. What I'm going to do next is put the drive shaft back down in, get the pinion gear back inside there with the nut on it. So here's the drive shaft and the pinion gear here. I did, after closer inspection, find a couple teeth that seem to have some material removed, and I think that is the wear. That's the only thing at all that I've seen so far with where any of that metal may be coming from. So what it's going to look like, so the drive shaft will be in the case, the pinion gear will be on it, and it will be engaged with the forward gear back there. But what I'm going to have to do is get the drive shaft in and then wiggle this gear up into it. Or maybe I can put the gear in first and slide the drive shaft down, and then I got to get in there and get the nut on it. Only with working one hand, so I can't record when I'm actually doing it, which is unfortunate, but I was able to get the pinion gear in there, and it was just a lot of turning and using the magnetic rod here just to get it to slip in. It doesn't seem like it'll go in, but it just finds its way in eventually. So now I'm going to slip the drive shaft down. Drive shaft is in. It is meshing up with the gears, and it can turn. So now the hard part, another hard part, you can see I need to get that nut around the threads there, the pinion nut. So it's going to be a lot of messing around to try to get it on there. I'm going to try this 7/8 French piece of napkin in between the wrench and the nut to hold it. I pulled back on the drive shaft a bit to get a little more clearance. I'm going to see if I can get this down in there and turn the drive shaft in order to get it to catch. Once again, that took some finagling, but got it on there. So now I just need to torque that down to 100 foot-pounds, I believe I saw online, 100 foot-pounds on that pinion nut. And to do that, stick the 7/8 in there, and then I got this adapter from Amazon. It splines right onto the drive shaft here, so you can crank on this end and have that nut stationary. All right, that was annoying, but I kind of got it, half got it. I didn't get a full 100 out of it. I got at least 50, probably 70 foot-pounds out of it, and I couldn't get a good bite anymore. So before I round it off even more, I started to round it off actually. Let's see if I can turn it right there. Just wasn't able to get a good solid bite, but I'm gonna keep moving forward now. So let me figure out the next thing to do, and then I'll show you what is next. Okay, so the next thing to put it back in is this gear, which on the diagram is here, and it meshes with the pinion right in the middle. So it'll just slide right in. It's got these teeth on it that I think mesh with those 3 teeth there, and then it will just sit on the pinion. So I guess this is maybe the reverse gear, perhaps, not sure, but it is that right there. This has a bearing that looked clean with a thrust washer, I think. Both looked okay and fine, so those are going back in. And then it will be time to clip these 2 clips around the front of it. I think there's one that goes behind it. I have to look back at my video, actually. I'm not totally sure, but there's grooves. There's 2 sets of grooves in here where they, see if I can focus it, snap into those snap rings. So I think one's in that far back one and one's in front. We'll figure it out. But this gear's going in next. Okay, both the snap rings are now in. See if I turn the drive shaft. Okay, both the snap rings are still in, or are in now. So now I gotta move on to that. Change out the anodes and the bearings and the seals. So I had to pull out the seal and get a little creative. Jammed it in my tree here with a tie-down strap so I could leverage on it. Used a seal puller and popped it out, and these are the 2 seals. So I have replacement ones right here, 2 of them. And I got the bearings too, so now I'm going to be trying to get the bearings out of there. Been battling this and figured I'd show you my current plan. I was able to bang the other one out no problem, but there wasn't really a good place other than these 2 oil passages, I think they're oil passages anyway, to get this one knocked out. So after banging around for a while, not getting any real progress at all, I took my grinder and just notched each edge out. So now I can get these needle bearings out. And what I can do is I can take my, there they come. Just knock them out. Okay, all the needles are out. And now what I'm thinking is I can take my oscillating blade and run it straight down. And then that should break it and pull it out that way. A little medieval, but I think it'll work. I was able to get it out so you can see what I did. And then I just banged it out from the other side. I did get this channel hit a little bit, but I'm hoping that's not a sealing surface and it's not where the bearing presses in, so I think we're okay. I'm just going to clean this up. Relatively cleaned up, I think replaced. I hit that channel more than I thought I did with my oscillating blade. Tried to clean it out. We'll see what happens. So I'm just going to take a big socket, put it over the top of the bearing, hammer it in, and then same thing on this side. I'll actually clean out in here a little bit. I haven't done that yet. And then same thing, socket on top of the bearing and hammer it down in. And then we'll have 2 new bearings, new anode, and then I have an O-ring to put on it, and then this will be ready to reinstall into the lower unit. I believe it goes in like this. I forgot about the seals. The diagram I think is trying to depict that they are back to back, and I believe they came out like this. So I'm not exactly sure. So I'm going to put them in like that, back to back, which means I'm going to start with one of them. I put grease in here just to, prevent the spring from coming out if it tried. So I'm going to hammer that one in, and then I'm going to figure out a way to hammer this one in. Maybe I can use one of the old seals on top of it, maybe like that, or something, to get both of these in. And there we are. We got both seals in, back to back. 1 bearing, 2 bearing. I'm just gonna put the O-ring on. I think I got them in. 4 of them came with good seals, except for this one back here. I don't know. I'm gonna try to get some light down in there. So I put some sealant around it. It did have an O-ring, but it was like a star O-ring. It wasn't just a regular O-ring like the other 3. So I put that one up in the top left, and put some gasket maker on it and thread sealant on it. The other 3 are just all O-rings. Not sure what the correct torque is. I took the, whatever you call this thing, put it on there, put a pipe on the end, wrapped a rag around it, hammered it back, and then was able to, by holding the lower unit upside down, I was able to get the little plate with the threads to engage with the nuts, and then I just kind of cinched it up hand tight, you know, snugged it with those 4 bolts. So the unit, I believe now, is technically sealed down here at this point. And I put it in reverse and just made sure that when I turn the drive shaft, still everything's connected. So I'm going to try to get the propeller on now. I got to figure out, looking at my video, this goes on for sure, like this. And then I'm guessing just the propeller. I'm going to clean this off first. Propeller goes on, and I got to figure out what the torque is. Couldn't find the torque spec, so I set it to 50. I saw some guy online saying 10 and then another guy saying 70, so I was like, okay, I'll just put 50 on it, put the cotter pin in, nylon washer behind it, and everything's still turning. So I think we're good. I guess we'll find out. That's the lower part of it's done. Now I need to do up here, water pump, shift assembly, replace this anode, slap it back in. I think I'm going to do the water pump next. That's it for today. Got the shift cover back on. I just torqued, you know, went around and snugged them, and then went around one more time just by feel. Not sure if there's an actual torque spec on that. So until I get the seal for the drive shaft, this is as far as I can go, and so we're going to wait for that to come in. So something really interesting. This bearing that goes in the bearing housing for the drive shaft, the bearing housing and seal assembly. So I took mine apart, took the seal out and took the bearing out, because this was $137 and I didn't want to pay that. But if you notice, they don't have the bearing as a part number for sale, and I didn't catch that until now. It's just not there. They do have the seal for sale on Crowley, and there's one available, so I think I might grab that. But then that left this bearing in question, and this is the old one, and I looked at it, and it's INA SCE1812B. So I plugged that number in and found this SCE1812. So it's not the B, but the measurements match. And I have a cheap Harbor Freight measurer, micrometer, caliper, whatever, here, and these dimensions on the existing bearing match this. So I guess the point is, if you need the bearing for the drive shaft housing and seal, you can order the seal, but you just need to source this bearing on your own.